but adult staff working at the Jewish Center appeared to be protecting the protesters. The video shows workers telling students who tried to film that they cannot film in that space, and they were escorted away. The College Fix even reports that some students had their phones taken and the videos deleted. AFN talked with Susan Tuckman, the director of the Zionist Organization of America's Center for Law and Justice.
I've read a few articles about what occurred, and it was deeply troubling. The Slivka Center for Jewish Life is supposed to be a haven for Jewish students, a home for Jewish students. It was horrifying to hear that there were Jewish students who felt that they had to hide in a bathroom, students that felt fear, students felt unsafe. They felt that they were betrayed by the staff at the Center for Jewish Life.
And for staff to say the students were not allowed to film there, Tuckman decided to check that out for herself.
I took a quick look at Yale's policy on recording, and to me it looks like the students who were trying to document the conduct had the right to do it, and they were prevented from doing so.
Meanwhile, President Trump is continuing his sweeping executive orders on a range of topics, including addressing anti-Semitism at colleges and universities. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
Several NATO allies are insisting that Ukraine and Europe must not be cut out of any peace negotiations after U.S. President Donald Trump signaled that he would hold talks soon with Russian President Vladimir Putin. UK Defense Secretary John Healey said Thursday that Ukraine's voice must be a part of any talks. The United States has rattled NATO by saying Ukraine should never join and that the European allies should take responsibility for Ukraine's security. Now they're having hearings about it. What was at first taken as a joke from Donald Trump has reached a point where they're actually having hearings. The Senate Commerce Committee has considered the possibility of buying the Arctic island nation of Greenland. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal has more.
Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz said the possibility of buying Greenland should be taken seriously.
Greenland sits directly on the shortest flight path for intercontinental ballistic missiles traveling from Russia or the Middle East to the United States.
At a Senate committee hearing, Washington Democratic Senator and Ranking Member Maria Cantwell said the U.S. doesn't necessarily need to buy Greenland, noting the many agreements we already have with them.
These agreements are in place that authorize dual-use investments, new port infrastructure, fiber optic cable, radar, and power plants.
One witness with the American Foreign Policy Council testified the U.S. should offer more defense capabilities to the island.
For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordahl.
As a nurse, I primarily work with children who are abused and exploited in trafficking, and I frequently see very unfair situations. We must talk about the issue of abuse. We can't base our actions on fear. We have to be faith-informed in what we do.
The Dr. Nurse Mama Show. For more from Dr. Jessica Peck, tune in at 2 p.m. Central on American Family Radio or on the podcast page at afr.net. Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues here on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Thursday, February the 13th, 2025, and joining me in studio is Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning, Tim.
And Chris Woodward.
Good morning.
And in KCKS is our good friend Ray Pritchard. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, except I've mentioned this before, and I guess we all, as we get older, we can get fixated on things, can't we?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
And I'm ready for the end of this winter, as it were. Now, we're not experiencing winter like you are, Ray, but
is the complaint department open this morning, Tim?
You too, huh?
I don't wish to be a complainer.
I'm seeing, let's see, Iowa's raising their hand, Ohio's raising their hand, and Kansas.
A couple of hours ago, it was zero,
yeah.
As in zero, with minus 12 wind chill. Fred, I thought I was in Nova Scotia.
Caroline Leavitt is on television right now outside the White House, which looks to be
outside the White House, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Outside the White House.
Yeah, the White House spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, is the snow-covered lawn there at the White House in Washington, D.C. Well, hopefully winter will be over soon. I think I speak for the majority of our listeners, and we'll get to springtime. And and enjoy some warmer weather and some greener grass. All right, lot to talk about today, we, so much happening in Washington, D.C. and now around the world, but certainly Washington, D.C. that we need to talk about.
I'm not a prophet, but I'm going to prophesy something.
Just don't be a prophet of doom.
No.
Okay.
I'm going to prophesy that for the next 4 years,
Yeah.
we will not be able to say it's a quiet day in Washington. It's just the screen is full of Donald Trump.
Stuff Trump is doing. How about that?
We should start a new section of AFN. Stuff Trump is doing. Yeah. We need to hire 2 new
this
people.
This does beg the question, when does the man sleep?
Rarely.
I'm thinking between 12 and 4.
Yeah.
Huh?
What was it, 2 days ago when he welcomed back the guy that had been held in Russia?
Yeah. Yes.
So he arrives in Washington in the midst of the snow, goes to the White House, and there's, kind of a big welcoming home ceremony there. And then the president's up the next morning, like 4 hours later, on to something else.
Contrast that with the last administration, the Biden administration. As Trump affectionately calls Joe Biden Sleepy Joe, and it was just wow. President Biden then would they would call it what they call a cap. What do they call it?
Put a lid on it.
Put a lid on it. That's the terminology they use at the White House, as in you won't be hearing from the president anymore today. And they would, quote, put a lid on it like at noon. Yeah. Okay? And every day, like noon, no more from the president. He's going to, get his nap and eat his ice cream and whatever else he was doing. But anyway, it was and then, of course, he never would talk to the press. Even though he had a favorable liberal press to talk to, he wouldn't talk to him because they had a few conservatives, but very few. Peter Ducey was, in charge of that. The line of questioning that would come from a conservative media person. But Biden just wouldn't make himself available, and we know now why.
Yes.
And so now we have that going on, to now where a CNN reporter, what's the Burnett?
Aaron Burnett.
Yeah, she's like saying, basically she's saying I can't keep up with this White House.
No,
it is like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah, and President Trump, to his credit, Ray, and I'm sure when he first started doing this, people probably advised against him. He will oftentimes just take all comers in media settings.
In fact, I think he actually relishes the give and take. I think he likes to wade into the controversy. And woe to the person who he doesn't like, who asks him a question, because he'll make you look bad right in front of he'll put you down. He'll put you down right in front of the whole world.
Yeah. The other day, Huffington Post, which is a liberal website, they asked him a question. He said, I thought y'all were dead. He didn't say y'all.
Yeah.
He said, I thought you were dead.
Right.
You're newsman. And then they did put one media service in timeout, didn't they?
Yes.
AP.
Yeah.
Oh, Associated Press.
Yeah.
Associated Press. Caroline Leavitt is a chip off the old block being Trump.
Right.
She can handle this. What happened was the Associated Press, in its style guide, is refusing to refer to what used to be the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America.
Okay.
And so the White House says, you ain't welcome into these, press
briefings.
Well, they're okay in the press briefings, but they're not allowed when Trump is speaking from behind the Resolute desk.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah.
When
the Oval Office.
The Oval Office.
Yeah.
You're not welcome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But they're still allowed in the daily press conference.
They were yesterday. Yes.
For those not aware, the Associated Press acts as if someone died and made them the end-all, be-all of news information, and they hold themselves to this high standard and demand outrageous fees for their news content. And that's why they think the way they think.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to me the way Trump handles. It's just give and take, and he does most of the giving. It's just contrast that with Biden. It's just absolutely night and day.
Yes.
Absolutely night and day. All right, you're listening to, by the way, one other question here before we dive into specific news stories. Ray, I want you to explain to me. If you can't, I'll turn it over to the Canadian American here. Or Chris, what's the deal with the price of eggs?
All I can tell you, I was talking with Marlene, my wife, about it just a little while ago. And here in Kansas City, okay, you can get 2 dozen for a little bit over $11. That seems outrageous to me, unbelievable to me. What, $5.50 a dozen? Is that even possible? I mean, I'm going. I haven't tried, Fred. I haven't tried to buy eggs lately, but I don't know. It's just gone through the roof.
Do you know why that is, Fred?
Well, some are blaming it on the bird flu, and they had to destroy tens of thousands of hens across the country. So it's the old supply and demand. So until the new batch of girls grows up and can start laying eggs again, we may have high egg prices.
Yeah.
But that's the reason for it?
That's one of the major reasons.
Yes. Yeah, people that have their own chickens in their backyard are like the 1%ers now. There's actually a thing it's trending on social media. You got Valentine's coming up tomorrow. By the way, man, if you haven't bought your wife a gift yet, tomorrow is the last day. But
why is it only men?
Because we tend to procrastinate or forget altogether.
Okay.
But
don't worry. You don't worry about it. You got all of today and tonight and tomorrow morning early.
Well, there is a thing that's trending. I've seen it on Facebook where it's a play on the whole "he went to Jared" thing, where it's like she's holding like a carton of eggs, and it says things like "he went to Kroger."
I just wondered. I don't buy groceries much.
Right.
We it's just Allison and me, so a lot of times we just grab dinner somewhere on the way home. But I just wondered that people are saying, we did have somebody, a friend of our ministry, drop some eggs off a little while ago, and so one of our staff came and said, "Hey, the eggs are here." And they're about 24 eggs, and I said, "Well, sell them for $10 each." Okay,
there you go.
They're fresh eggs. I mean, right out of the.
Wow.
I better be careful right there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Extremely fresh.
Right off the farm.
Right off the farm. There you go.
Anyway, I just wonder what is the deal with the price of eggs people keep complaining about, and so it's the bird flu. That's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying. They had to destroy so many hens.
All right. You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, Chris, and Ray. What's your first story, Chris?
Well, as we speak, the Senate is voting on Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and whether or not he should be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. It looks like he has gotten at least one Republican no vote, that being from Senator Mitch McConnell, former Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who apparently doesn't want RFK Jr. at HHS. It does appear like he is on a path right now, when you go by the numbers, that he actually could be confirmed. This is one of several things involving confirmations that we can go over right now. As they're voting in the Senate, there's also a committee in the Senate that is having a confirmation hearing for Linda McMahon. She is the secretary nominee for the Department of Education, which, of course, President Trump wants to dismantle. I'll get to that in a minute. But in a brief soundbite from Linda McMahon in her opening statements, if anybody has any questions about where she might be on the issue of parents and families and education, here is but a glimpse of where she might fall on those issues. Clip 11.
Listen to parents, not politicians. Build up careers, not college debt. Empower states, not special interests.
So there you have it.
So back to just a minute. I want to get to the secretary to the Department of Education. What Trump said yesterday. Mm-hmm. So Mitch McConnell, when is he retiring?
As soon as this term is out.
2050?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, he's out before.
Oh, he's out before then.
Oh, yeah.
He was also a no on
I know he's voting no on everything.
Yes,
which is his way, Ray. Of let me put it this way: he's just waving at the White House, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, he's waving, and he's just saying hello.
He's an old man, and he doesn't care.
No, I know.
That's
he's
right.
about to go
and
out.
And he doesn't like Donald Trump at all.
So he's going to vote no on everything.
Yeah.
I think because he and Trump have not gotten along for a long time. And, they both can dish it out, against each other. But anyway, So Mitch McConnell, now is he going to be the lone Republican no vote on RFK Jr.?
It appears that he might be.
Yeah.
According to, I'm reading the tickers at the bottom of CNN and MSNBC.
Because RFK Jr. and I guess Kash Patel and there's been some party line votes here, and a couple of them went party. Go ahead.
Speaking of Patel, the Senate has voted to advance his nomination, so he appears to be on a path for that position at FBI.
What do you think about RFK Jr. Getting in, Ray? What do you think will be most notable about his? He's going to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Ray.
Okay, look, I think it's great that a guy's coming in who's going to buck the trends, who's not going to do the bidding of big pharma, who's going to be skeptical about scientific claims, who's going to push back and ask hard questions. Hey, after COVID, after all that happened with the shutdowns, the lockdowns, and all of that, politically, do I agree 100% or even close to 100% with RFK Jr.? I don't. Do I expect him to make some decisions I'm going to disagree with? Yeah. But I'm glad to have somebody in there who is not beholden to big pharma and the whole medical establishment, who's going to ask some hard questions. So, yeah. I think he's a pretty good choice.
Yeah, right. Fred?
He is. I think his focus is going to be, and why he's getting a lot of support, he's declared war on food additives. All the junk that some of the companies put into things like cereal,
right?
That he says are very bad for people's health. He compares it to Europe and to Canada to a certain extent, where they use vegetable coloring for their Cheerios instead of some kind of chemical. Mm-hmm. So he is winning a lot of points on that front. I think that's going to be his initial thrust, but Ray's exactly right. He is not going to be beholden to big pharma, and that will be another chapter of what he's going to focus on.
Yeah. So you guys think that others in the past have been beholden to big pharma?
No question.
Big pharma being pharmaceutical companies.
No question.
Okay.
No question.
RFK is now at 50 votes, no 46.
So he's going to pass. Or he's going to pass with 51 or more, because otherwise Vice President J.D. Vance would not be in Europe.
That's right. Collins and Murkowski, senators from Maine and from Alaska, have, for instance, they voted against Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
And Vance had to come in and do the swing vote there. But as you say, Vance is in Europe. So the Republicans aren't worried. They have Collins and Murkowski on board. So
they do? Okay.
Yes.
With RFK Jr.?
Yes.
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah, I guess.
Because he is considered, don't misunderstand me. Please don't misunderstand me. I don't consider him a quack, but on these issues. But a lot of people in the, quote, mainstream medical industry, you could call it that, they think he's a quack.
Yeah, they've called him an anti-vaxxer. His response to that has been, hey, my kids are all vaccinated.
Yeah.
He is suspicious of vaccines.
As are millions of Americans.
Yes, that just pop up, and we're asked to trust the pharmaceutical companies.
Well, I'll give you a prime example. Everybody knows about this. The COVID vaccine shot.
Yes.
By the way, an aside there, I saw a stat yesterday. COVID is still affecting people, but the death rate is tiny. I'm talking about under like 1% or something. I mean, what I'm saying is they were saying that the flu now is more dangerous than COVID.
Yeah.
COVID has so, what would you call it, been minimalized, okay, the impact on the body. Still gets people sick. We had, I think Steve Jordahl had COVID for a few days. But I'm just saying it's not going to people's lungs and threatening people's lives for the most part. Where was I? What was I talking about?
Well, we're talking about vaccines.
Oh, the vaccines. Okay.
Suspicions.
Okay. I'll tell you what heightened this more than anything else was what happened during the COVID experience here in our country and around the world, but particularly in our country, and it divided our nation over vaccines or not vaccines. Are you going to take it or not? If you don't take it, then you're for killing people.
Well, and it was the mandates.
And the mandates.
You got to take it or you're fired.
Right. And really all people were saying that almost everyone I knew fell into this camp, and we were called anti-science.
Yeah.
anti-vax, which wasn't the truth, but they were saying our side on this issue, which RFK would have represented, is that this is an experimental vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It's an experimental shot.
Mm-hmm.
That word experimental is put there for a reason.
Yes.
And the people promoting the COVID vaccine shots left that out conveniently when they were describing this. Am I right?
That is exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not a lab rat.
Right.
So I'm sorry. I'm not going to take something that hasn't been tested.
Right.
And I think there's been evidence, and we've talked about this over the last few years, that for some people, those vaccines had a extremely negative impact.
Right. And there's so much that was unknown. And we took the approach that if somebody wants to take it, fine.
Yes.
Fine. Take the COVID vaccine shot, because I know a lot of Ray, you took one, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
But you took it voluntarily?
That's right.
And
back then in the beginning, we did not know, right? No. We did not know. And of course, that's part of the problem. We didn't know. Government didn't fret all the problems you said. Yeah, I took it, Marlene, and I had it. And,
but I mean, that's fine. Listen, everybody makes their own choices, right? And so the problem that we had, and I think this President Trump, although he promoted the vaccine, because he was told, hey, by the people in white coats, hey, this is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he didn't know. He was just going on what they said. He wasn't a scientist. He's a businessman. Yeah. So he was just going on what they said, and he thought he was doing a good service. That is Trump. And I think, to be fair to him, he was trying his best to come up, to encourage the companies to come up with the vaccine, because COVID was having a devastating impact on our country.
Yeah.
So, but Trump was in favor of getting the vaccine out there, but he was against the mandates, which is the whole point. And then when they started firing our military, because they wouldn't take, again, the word experimental shots that we didn't have any, they rushed it to market, as they say. They skipped the normal protocols that go into getting a vaccine out in the name of saving lives, again, which is fine, but let's acknowledge that. And also, don't fire people who don't want to get the shot. And one other point, I know we're reiterating a lot of what we talked about 2 years ago, but we need to look back on this and not let it ever happen again. And that is, people were losing not only jobs in the military, but they were losing jobs in private businesses.
Yes.
If you didn't get the shot, you're fired.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, 6 months into the shot being promoted, then they tell us, well, guess what? It doesn't keep you from getting COVID. Oh, really? I thought that's what a vaccine was for.
Mm-hmm.
So they changed the rules. Maybe rules isn't the way to say it. They changed the claims. They changed the claims in the middle of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then, remember Biden saying, hey, this will keep you from getting COVID. And then what else did they say secondly? They said, keep you from spreading it.
Mm-hmm.
But then they came back and said, we were wrong about that too.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't keep you from getting it, and it doesn't keep you from spreading it. And guess what? We really don't know what the impact is going to be long term.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't say that like I just said it, but that's really what
happened.
What happened is we don't know. Well, they did learn, at least some. I know in Europe, I think it was several European countries, Ray, Fred and Chris and listeners, several European countries discovered that the COVID vaccine shots were dangerous for, I think, males under 30, because it caused, is it myocarditis? Is that
heart issue problems?
Heart. It caused heart. Potentially, it caused heart. Now, maybe with a small number of people, but still, it was such that those European countries said, no, we're not giving the vaccine to these young males anymore, because there's some problems there we don't fully understand.
Yes.
I'm just saying, back to the big picture of RFK Jr., he would have fallen into the category that I just described, right?
Yes.
And so for that, 2 years ago, he would have been probably voted 100 to 0 or 90 to 10. Now he's going to be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Yep.
He is the one Democrat. He's the one Kennedy that no Democrat wants anything to do with, pretty much.
Yeah.
Even his own family members.
Why is that?
Because they don't like his positions on things, and the fact that he endorsed Trump in the 2024 election.
Okay. Well, then they need a shot for TDS. They need to get a vaccine. There's a vaccine available for Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes.
You're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, Chris, and Ray. Next story, Chris.
We don't have time for the Trump audio with the Department.
Let's take our break right now.
Okay. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Come back with.
Take our break a little early here. Come back. What audio are we going to hear?
It's President Trump. It's his latest remarks about why we should dismantle the Federal Department of Education, which is something he's been saying for months.
All right, we'll get to that. President Ronald Reagan said the same thing in 1980, something like that. And, of course, that never happened, the dismantling of the Department of Education. And we'll share our thoughts on this because I think it's a good idea, not because I'm against education, but for reasons I will explain when we get back from the break, which I share the thoughts of President Donald Trump on this issue. We will play his remarks on the future of the Department of Education, or as we say on Trivia Friday, edumacation. We'll be back momentarily.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
Strange how God made the world, or not the actual creation, but the way in which He made us human beings. He implanted within all of us, the desire to love and to be loved, to appreciate and be appreciated. And some of the grandest moments of our lives are when we are reminded that we are loved and appreciated. Once I received in the mail a letter from a couple who live in Alamogordo, New Mexico. It was a rather short letter, probably taking the writer a couple of minutes to write. But the good it did me was measureless. May I share it with you? We'd like you to know, it began, how very much whatsoever things written by you and published in our Star Shopper means to us. We look forward to it each week and always enclose it in a letter to someone. May God continue to bless your work for Him. Well, a couple of days later, another small note came in the mail. This one was from Deltaville, Virginia. Using the title of one of my recent newspaper articles, the writer had written a single line which made me humble and thankful. Your articles, the writer wrote, stir up my hope. All of us have this desire, don't we? Every one of us appreciates appreciation. We like a little flattery occasionally, even if we know it isn't true. And when someone says something to us which compliments something we have done, it lifts our hearts beyond expression. Why we humans fail to use this wonderful power which costs nothing and buys everything is hard to understand. It has the power to heal our hurts, find us friends, and build up brotherhood. The world is waiting to open its doors to anyone who will live this way. To those who can find compliment instead of condemnation, to those who can find friends instead of fault, to those who look for the best instead of the bad, the world literally opens its doors and says, "Welcome." The person who can develop this way of living will never be in want, never go hungry, never be alone. People will absolutely stand at their door begging for their companionship. Now, where does one acquire this way of living? Why, from the Galilean, of course. For isn't it He who teaches us to look for the good? Isn't it He who causes us to forget our stinginess and selfishness? Isn't it He who teaches us to lose ourselves so that we may find ourselves? So I guess that if we're interested in finding life to be this way, we have to be willing to follow His way. Many of us are willing to take this approach when dealing with our friends. Few of us are willing to do it when we deal with our enemies. It's a real shame, too, for we could get rid of our enemies by living this way. Don't we get rid of our enemies when we make them our friends? It's true. Little things mean a lot, especially expressed appreciation.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Therefore, since we have been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Through him we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope of the glory of God.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues. That's the name of this show on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, Chris, and Ray. And now we welcome our good friend, Dr. Alex McFarland. Good morning, Brother Alex.
Good morning, everybody.
In North Carolina today?
Yes, sir.
What's your day look like? What are you going to be doing today?
Well, I'm writing an article about Gaza. And do you know, and that's a whole nother subject, but...
Hey, hold that subject. That is
okay.
Interesting. I do want to talk about that because Gaza is an ancient biblical place. I do want to talk about that, but before we jump into that, we need to finish this conversation we were having about the Department of Education, the United States federal government Department of Education, because in Washington, D.C. today, the soon-to-be Secretary of Education, who's trying to get herself out of her, trying to fire herself soon. What's her name?
Linda McMahon.
Okay, she's appearing before the Senate.
Yes.
And having hearings.
A North Carolinian, by the way.
Is she really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Originally from North Carolina. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so regarding the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and just for those who don't know, I know I'm getting elementary here, but it is if you go to Washington, D.C., there's a big building there, as there are a lot of big buildings, that out in the front of it says Department of Education. It's been there since the 70s. Mm-hmm. It started under the Carter administration. And so they do what they do, which is basically try to do everything they can to federalize education and control education, U.S. public education, with mandates and curriculum and all kinds of things tied to money that they distribute from Washington, D.C. through the Department of Education to the states, okay? So if you take a conservative view of government, as Ronald Reagan did, you don't need this. This is an unnecessary, quote, middleman. And conservatives have long argued that that the progressives use the Department of Education to promote their ideology in various and sundry ways. Not to mention just controlling things from D.C., which is centralized government, which our founding fathers were opposed to. Does that give you a basic understanding of the issue at hand? Now, yesterday, President Trump was commenting on this.
Yes, for the umpteenth time.
Yeah, he's got a burr under his saddle.
A little bit.
Well said.
When Trump gets a burr under his saddle, he talks about it every day, okay? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then the 4 hours that he sleeps, he probably dreams about it. Right. Anyway, so what do we got going on here, Chris? What did President Trump, we're going to play what he said?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Trump yesterday saying, again, why we should dismantle the federal Department of Education and give it all back to the states. Clip 8.
Look, the Department of Education's a big con job. We're ranked, so they rank the top 40 countries in the world. We're ranked number 40th. But we're ranked number 1 in one department, costs per pupil. So we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world, but we're ranked number 40. We've been between 38 and 40. The last time I looked, it was 38, and then I looked 2 days ago, it came out the new list. It came out at number 40, so we're ranked 40. Norway, Denmark, Sweden, I hate to say it, China, as big as it is, it's ranked in the top 5, and that's a primary competitor. We're ranked number 40. So if we're ranked number 40, that means something's really wrong, right? And I say send it back to Iowa, to Idaho, to Colorado. Send it back to places.
Okay. So what Of course, as usual, President Trump, no question where he stands on this, right?
Yeah.
So Alex, talk to you first about this. I agree with him. What he's saying is, take the money, as I understand what he's saying, take the money that would be designated to spend for the Department of Education in Washington, D.C., take that money and just go ahead and close them down, and then just distribute the money to the 50 states earmarked for education. What would be wrong with that, Alex?
I don't think there'd be anything wrong with it. But, the wasteful utopians in Washington feel that their wasteful utopianism is being threatened, which
yes.
it is.
Yes.
Okay, the federal government's powers are limited by the Constitution, and powers not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution by default are assumed to be in the hands of the states and the people of the states. And so education, there's no constitutional mandate that there has to be a Department of Education.
Right.
And here's why limited government conservatives like myself, rejoice. The DOE is DEI. The Department of Education has been so woke and progressive, and besides being, I think unconstitutional, it's not specifically enumerated by the Constitution. The federalizing of and nationalizing of education has cranked out several generations of students that really don't understand Western civ or American exceptionalism. Here's what we ought to do as DEI is being, dispensed with, we hope. I was asked this morning on an interview what will take its place, and I said, I don't know, but I know what should. Schools should teach Western civ and American exceptionalism.
Yeah, we used to do that forever.
We did
in this country. We used to teach. We were proud Americans. We had patriotism. We had God and country front and center.
Exactly.
We said the Pledge of Allegiance before the school started. Does that mean our country is perfect and doesn't have problems, and haven't had problems? We didn't know. But the principles and the values of our nation are worth celebrating. And what
exactly?
And what the Department of Education. Now, I don't have specific papers in my hand to document what I'm saying. I'm just saying Alex should get hold of them pretty quick if we needed to, because it's been well documented. They take a very, quote, progressive, liberal view of government and politics, and we all know how America's been, in the last 20 years, everybody's been bad-mouthing America in academia. Oh, you were colonizers. Oh, you were racist. Oh, we had slavery. Oh, we mistreated the Indians. So basically, that's what we need to focus on. Project 1619, or whatever that was. So
it was terrible.
Yeah. So we've there's been a backlash to that, a good backlash. I think President Trump's election symbolized that, to all this woke garbage. When we say no, America is not a fundamentally a racist place, and we need to quit saying that. We're going to make people ashamed to be Americans, and that's going to lead to the demise of our nation, which will, a lot of people say that Marxists and communists want to use that to ultimately take over America. That's a subject for another day. But I'm just talking about the deprogramming of our children to make them ashamed to be Americans.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So
school kids should be taught to love America, appreciate this country and all the opportunities that it represents. Kids in schools should say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And let me just say two things. And look, obviously as a Christian, my heart and my passion is that people know Jesus and get saved. But as a citizen, school kids should be taught Western culture, that the values of the West come from Rome and Greece and Christianity. The best of Roman government and Latin language, so much of our language comes from Rome. Critical thinking skills come from Aristotle. but our moral foundation and see, the Constitution doesn't exist in a vacuum. The philosophical foundation of the Constitution is what we call the Judeo-Christian worldview. And it came, Western Civ came to its fullest expression in this exceptional God-ordained nation called the United States.
Amen. And listen, one of the founding principles that our country was about, and the founding fathers certainly articulated this, is we don't want centralized power. All right? Yes, we have to have a federal government, but it needs to be a skeletal organization, okay? And if you centralize power in Washington, D.C., which is what progressives want to do, they call themselves progressives. I only call them that because they call themselves that. A lot of their ideas, as Abe Hamilton says, are, what does he say, regressive? Regressive. Mm-hmm. What we used to call liberals, and not all liberals fall into the hate America category, I know that. But what they want to do is centralize power. If you can gain control of power from one place, Washington, D.C., then it's easy to control people. That's the antithesis of what our founding fathers advocated for and what we fought for. In fact, so the founding fathers recognized that if you the closer the power is to the people on the ground, so to speak, the people that vote, the more accountable government is to citizens, Ray. So if you got, I live in Tupelo, Mississippi. So you live in Kansas City, Kansas. People are going to know, your city councilman, your mayor, your county commissioners, your governor, they're going to be more accountable to you than the Department of Education is in Washington, D.C.
Isn't it common sense that people in Kansas City are rightly more concerned about the schools in Kansas City? And we know more about our own culture.
Right.
We know more about our own city. We know more about our own students than the bureaucrats do in Washington.
Right.
And I think I am all in favor of shutting down the big bureaucracy and pushing the money and as many decisions as possible back to the local and state level. I think that's all Mr. Trump is really saying.
That's what he's saying.
I think the education industry they're going to put up an unbelievable howling fight against that.
Yeah, and he also said, President Trump made a good point, we're not getting bang for our buck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
We're spending more per student than any other country in the world, and we have the worst results.
How do you argue? Is that true? If it's true, how do you argue with that?
The report card just came out from the federal government.
Yes.
And do you know, I read a stat about a month ago, 85% of the males incarcerated in America are illiterate, cannot read.
Well, there you
and
go.
And yet they are the products of public school. Tim, to your point about, the people in Kansas City, they're going to care about the schools in Kansas City. Was it Pat Buchanan that said all politics are local politics?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah. And so I think that was one of the genius, values of America's founders, that very limited federal government, protect the coast, deliver the mail.
Hey, by the way, along the lines of education, did you see what happened in Tennessee yesterday? Fred, you have that story right in front of you. Who has it? You're Chris.
Yep. Governor Bill Lee yesterday signed legislation for, I think, is now the first class school choice law in the country. They're going to spend $447 million, and it's a universal program because private schools, Christian schools, can take advantage of this. Again, parents are going to be able to decide, hey, I think this Christian school down the street is offering a terrific education, and now I'm going to be able to use my taxpayers' dollars to send my child
in the form of what, a voucher or some kind?
In the form of a voucher, exactly.
Okay.
This is what should happen. This is the ultimate in local control. Mom and dad deciding where Jimmy and Janie are going to go to school.
Right. Right.
And that
so that passed, and passed in the Tennessee legislature, and the governor signed it.
It has been signed into law by Governor Bill Lee.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, good for him.
Yes.
That's a big news story. Did you see this, Alex?
I did not, but I'm glad to hear of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think other
Are
states.
you going to put that story on our website?
I got it.
Yes.
Just
on our Today's Issues Facebook page, we'll put that story.
I think Arkansas will do the same thing.
Yeah.
Governor Sarah Huckabee there.
Some of the red states will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She'll be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how can you argue against it? Quite frankly, all you're doing is you're giving the freedom to the parents to decide where they want to send their kids to school,
and using their taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, you're just giving them a voucher. So if X number of your tax dollars goes toward education in your state, all they're saying is, if you're going to send your kids to a non-public school, then just take that. They're saying, this is what I understand it is, they're just saying, take that $500 out of your paycheck that would have otherwise gone to education, to public education, and you can spend it on your kid.
Yes.
Is that the law?
Yes. And, people who have been advocates, and there are some good public schools, good public school teachers out there. If you still want to send your kid to public school, that's okay.
Yeah, yes, you can.
That's okay.
Right.
You can do that.
Right. It's more freedom.
Yes.
It's more freedom.
Choice.
More choice. Yeah.
Many weeks ago, it was probably at some point in 2024, our latest reporter, Bronson Woodruff, he was doing a story about school choice somewhere, and he was interviewing a guy who is also a pastor, and they were talking about school choice. It was a story about how churches were starting to look into ways you can start your own church school because of the rise in school choice interest. And so Bronson asked the guy who happens to be a pastor, hey, what do you make of the arguments from people that, we're putting public money towards religious institutions? And the pastor told Bronson, I'm going to try to find the article and post it, but the pastor told Bronson, well, I've been working all my life, and I've been putting money into schools, and I don't get anything for it.
Yeah.
And so many people are glad of the direction states and federal people are moving.
Yeah. So the big news right now, though, out of our nation's capital is that RFK Jr. has been confirmed as the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, which is a cabinet level position, as you know, in the Trump administration. So the only help me guys, who's been defeated? Nope, that Trump's nominated for a cabinet.
None of his nominees. Remember,
Matt Gaetz withdrew.
Yeah,
he withdrew.
Yeah, he did. He never was voted on. So, but Pete Hegseth got voted. It was a 50-50. It was a 50-50 vote, and then the Vice President Vance.
He got Vanced in.
Yes. So, anyway, but Kash Patel's the next one, and along with this, the Secretary of Education. I don't. Is she controversial in the sense that she might be beat?
No, she won't be beat.
Okay.
No.
So then the big question mark then becomes the new head of the FBI.
Yes.
Will Kash Patel get that job?
And he did get. There was some sort of vote today that advanced his nomination
out of the committee.
Yes.
Which is a good sign for him.
Yes.
Alex and Rain, everybody, if Kash Patel doesn't make it as the FBI director in the Senate vote, I think Trump ought to nominate him for the Secretary of Treasury. Nobody got my joke. Okay. That joke. So I knew
Cash.
I knew that joke was going
to. Okay. Got it.
I get it.
Really,
get it.
Really slow.
Alex, you get it there in North Carolina?
I get it. Hey, the Treasury, it's all based on cash.
It was. Oh well, that's
the fact that it took me a minute is an indictment.
Well,
on the
I knew that was
Department
going to be. I knew that was going to be a risky joke. And probably nobody get it. Yeah, it's all about timing. But Cash with a K, that's how he spells it.
Yes.
Go ahead, Alex.
I have an idea. Now, seriously, I wish Trump would make Franklin Graham head of FEMA. I mean, think about this. Yeah. Okay, one of the greatest relief agencies in the world, efficient, effective, Samaritan's Purse. And, it's come out how FEMA has wasted money. I mean, think about this. In my home state of North Carolina, aid was withheld from people who had a Trump sign and or conservative signs in their yard. And yet Franklin Graham gave the Cove for 3 months plus. It was a staging area for first responders and hundreds of relief workers of all strata. They were fed and housed at the Cove. Franklin Graham, godly man, great American, incredibly efficient leader of Samaritan's Purse the world over. We all know and love Samaritan's Purse. Tim, follow me here. Wouldn't it be a great pick? Now, I don't know if he would do it. Make Franklin Graham head of FEMA. What do you think of that, Tim?
I agree, but I think Franklin Graham would be wanting to have Bible studies before every day there at the FEMA. I don't know if
works for me.
Somebody
Works
at
for me.
FFRF would lose their mind. if
I'm all for
Franklin
it, but
said,
yeah.
in Jesus' name.
Right.
That's
listen,
good.
You're right. You did have a good. Franklin Graham does have a great reputation, and his ministry does, Samaritan's Purse, for helping millions of people around the world from hit hard by natural disasters. They've had a long history of that. I think it'd be wonderful, yeah, if he would be in charge of that. I don't know that he would take it, but
just a thought.
Yeah, just a good name. You're listening to Today's Issues. That's the name of this program on the American Family Radio Network. Tim, Fred, Chris, Alex, and Ray. What are you and Brother Bert going to be talking about this afternoon, Alex?
Well, we are in the book of Exodus, and we are about to do the 10th and final plague, the death of the firstborn. Yesterday we talked about the plague of darkness, but in 15 years, Bert and I, we have taught verse by verse through the Bible almost 3 times. And so we're in the book of Exodus, and then we take calls and questions. And our Facebook page, a year ago, Brent Austin, our engineer, started an Exploring the Word Facebook page, and now we're over 10,000 followers on Facebook.
Wow.
And we stream Exploring the Word not only on the website afr.net, but even on X. And man, we got people the world over listening to Bible teaching every afternoon at 3 o'clock Central.
Well, of course, I don't talk about this much because I don't like to brag on myself, but that was my idea.
Amen. God bless you.
No, the Exploring the Word show that you and Bert do, Alex, was my idea. And like
That's
I said,
true.
I don't want to talk about it much because I don't want to seem like I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying?
But
Get patted on the back. I don't need pats on the back, even though I was the one who had the idea to start that show.
God led you.
True.
God led you.
Yes, the Lord led me.
You heard from the Spirit that day.
I did. I did. It's been a great show on AFR, and a lot of people have benefited from exploring the Word. Hey, you mentioned you were writing an article about Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it.
Well,
preview it.
Yeah. So people say, "Oh, America has no business, developing Gaza," or, I'm working on this analogy, and guys, push back if I'm in the wrong, but here's the thing: Goliath doesn't kill. Well, one writer said this: the problem with Gaza is it's populated with Gazans, and it's almost like the world is demanding that Israel negotiate in good faith with people that have murdered and raped and not ever acted in good faith. So what America's interested in, it's almost like, let's say somebody at school, the bully steals their lunch money, and then an older student says, look, give me that kid's lunch money because you had no right to steal his lunch money, and I'm going to go through the line with you and pay for your lunch. We're like the big brother helping Israel. Now, Israel is quite capable of defending itself, but it is in the best interest of world stability and safety in the Middle East, the squelching of terrorism. The world is a safer place when America stands with and for Israel, and that is our vested interest in the stabilization of Gaza. And it belongs. And a lot of my friends, Tim, even Christians, they'll say, oh, but what about the Palestinians? Well, as I read my Bible, that land was given to Abraham and his descendants forever. And really, Islam didn't even exist until 610 AD. Jews had been in that region for 3,000 years prior to that. The people can say, "Oh, we're engaging in, colonialism," all they want, but irrespective of spiritual considerations, it's a safer world when terrorism is arrested.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I will say this: you mentioned for pushback, and I'm not pushing back to disagree with what you said, but a consideration here, which to me, I don't know what's going to happen for this reason. And Ray, you can comment too. The Palestinian people, which are the Arabs there who live in Gaza right now, represented by Hamas, a terrorist organization. So we have to acknowledge that. That's a big deal.
And even the surrounding Arab nations won't take the Gazans.
They won't, at least not right now. Now Trump's trying to force them to, but right now they won't, and that's for good reason. But that's the problem, Ray, as I see it here. The big problem with this whole situation is, what do you do with 1.5 million people? 1.5 million to 2 million people. That's the number I've seen, which live in Gaza. For those who don't know, Gaza is it's often called the Gaza Strip. It's a little piece, 25 miles long or whatever it is there. Am I right? Who knows
That's
this?
Right. It's very small.
Okay, it's a very small piece of land that is on the Mediterranean. So that's why Trump's saying it's a beautiful piece of land. He's correct on that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know what you do with all these people, because Jordan doesn't want them. Their own Arab brethren, surrounding countries, don't want them because they historically have been troublemakers.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to overthrow the king of Jordan when they moved there. They came in as refugees from the war in Israel there in the 60s, and that's why King of Jordan is saying, we don't want. They need to stay there. He didn't say it like I did. He didn't say we don't want them. He said they need to stay where they are. Egypt doesn't want them. I don't know what you do. It's a big mess. And of course you might just say, well, let them stay there and figure it out. That may be where we end up. At the end of the day, is they'll just live in this rubble for decades on end. We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Dr. Travis was a man that was full of life.
Bert Harper of Exploring the Word.
He loved the Word of God, and it came across in the classroom. Dr. Travis put in my heart a desire to know God through His Word. And that's what we're trying to do on Exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
This is American Family News. I'm Steve Jordahl. The Senate is planning to hold a confirmation vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the next Secretary of Health and Human Services later today. Fox's Chad Pergram reports from Capitol Hill.
The confirmation vote on RFK Jr. comes after the Senate broke a filibuster on the nomination. Democrats blasted Kennedy's understanding of Medicaid and his stance on vaccines in a late-night session. The question is not whether the Senate will confirm Kennedy, but whether all Republicans will vote yes. Lisa Murkowski will support Kennedy, so will Susan Collins. Watch former Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He voted to break a filibuster on the nomination yesterday, but McConnell suffered from polio as a child. He was the lone GOP no on the confirmation vote of Tulsi Gabbard to become Director of National Intelligence yesterday.
The hearing is expected to begin around 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Elon Musk called on Saturday for the United States to delete entire agencies from the federal government as part of his push under President Trump to cut spending and restructure priorities. Musk offered a wide-ranging survey via a video call to the World Government's Summit in Dubai. Democrats were none too happy with Musk, the leader of the Department of Government Efficiency, at the House's first DOGE subcommittee hearing. On Fox and Friends First, Maryland Congressman Andy Harris says they're trying to get in the way of DOJ's goals.
If you go back over the years, everything that they don't like is a constitutional crisis. The bottom line is that this president clearly is within his authority. The courts are going to prove that. So again, this is just complaining.
Despite promises of transparency, the DOJ website and X account are lacking information and details relating to what actions the agency is taking and what programs are being cut. Several of DOJ's actions have also been blocked by judges who found the agency was violating federal law. And a law firm that fights for religious liberty is suing the governor of Idaho to reinstate a National Guard officer who was stripped of his command because of his Christian beliefs. AFN's Chad Groening has more.
Liberty Counsel has filed suit on behalf of Major David Worley against Governor Brad Little and 2 senior military officials, contending that he was unlawfully removed from his command because of his Christian beliefs. The issue began when Major Worley, an infantry officer, ran for mayor of Pocatello, Idaho in 2023. Daniel Schmidt is senior litigation counsel for Liberty Counsel.
A subordinate officer to Major Worley filed a complaint against him, saying that he had created a hostile work environment based on some social media posts he posted when he was running for elected office. They were about the drag queen story hour and the moral rot of society in general, and talking about a return to sanity and morality. Purely political speech, purely protected speech, and it was done outside the confines of the National Guard to begin with. So the National Guard had no business investigating this at all.
And Schmidt says the complaint argues that the Idaho Army National Guard was urged to implement an unconstitutional policy the filing calls no Christians in command.
The investigating officer said, because Major Worley's post created a problem for us, what we need to do is institute a policy in the Idaho Army National Guard. And if they have these Christian ideologies that others might find quote-unquote offensive, we shouldn't put them in command because it creates these investigating problems. That's a no Christians in command policy. Is blatantly unconstitutional. And removing a 23-year veteran who's dedicated his life to serve the country on that basis is just unfathomable.
I'm Chad Groening.
Finally, President Trump has repeatedly said Canada should be the 51st U.S. state, erasing the 5,500-mile border the nations share and alleviating the need for tariffs he's threatened against one of America's top allies. Adding a new state usually requires an act of Congress, which means clearing the Senate's 60-vote support bar. The U.S. has not added a state since Hawaii in 1959. Adding Canada would dramatically reshape the presidential elections since it would instantly become the largest U.S. state. Plus, it's not even clear if Canada would want to become a U.S. state, though technically it would be possible without Canada's buy-in. Find more news and information online. Our web address is afn.net. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and the AFN mobile app. For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordan.
American Family Association would like to thank everyone who participated in our Target boycott. AFA declared the boycott when Target announced it would allow men into women's dressing rooms and restrooms. Since the start of the boycott, Target lost over $2 billion in stock value. They've scaled back LGBT Pride Month products and added single-occupancy restrooms. Other corporations also reconsidered their policies in light of the Target boycott. Since it served its purpose, AFA has officially ended our Target boycott.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim with Fred. Thank you for listening to AFR. Steve Paisley-Jordahl joins us now. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, everybody.
And in Kansas City is Ray Pritchard. Hey, Ray, Alex was talking about Gaza, and I was mentioning the Gaza Strip. That's what it's often referred to as now. Can you tell, what's the biblical history there?
Hey, one word. The Philistines. Gaza was Philistine territory.
Okay.
And remember, in Judges chapter 16, Samson, just before, there's a little tiny episode just before the big deal with Delilah, where he goes down to Gaza and he rips this gate off, and there's a prostitute down there and he sleeps with her. He shouldn't have done that. Okay, let's be clear. He should. In case anybody's doubting about this.
He didn't choose wisely.
He did not. No, he did not choose wisely. But it was his way of getting back and irritating the Philistines, and so that kind of sets up the whole story with Samson and Delilah and the big climax and all of that. So it's Philistine territory going way back into the Old Testament, and the Philistines there, Ashdod, Gaza, there along the Mediterranean coast, they were a burr in the saddle. Okay, I think that's the phrase. They were a burr in the saddle of the Jewish people, of the Israelites, for not just generations, but for centuries.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant ended up down there for a while, didn't it, Ray?
It did.
And that made the Philistines very uncomfortable. We don't need to go into the details on why they were uncomfortable.
Well, you got the golden tumors and all of that. And hey, read it free. Hey, we're not making this stuff up, folks. It's just right there in the Bible.
That's right.
It's in the Bible.
All right.
Does that help, Tim?
Yeah, that helps. Gaza, mentioned in the Bible.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And still in existence today, as there are many places in the Middle East, but certainly in Israel. When we go to the Holy Land on our tours, and you guys have been. You've been, Steve?
I've never been.
Okay. Anyway, every day, everywhere you go is something you've read about in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's the place where it happened.
Yes.
That's just so amazing.
It is.
It's still, Jerusalem.
The Eli Valley, where David went down and, got the 5 smooth stones, and he smote Goliath, right?
Yeah.
You can walk right there, right into the Eli Valley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just amazing. So Gaza, mentioned in the Bible there, that's the same place we're talking about today.
But also future. When the Bible talks about prophecy, it talks about places you can go to today.
Yeah.
Where
right.
there are events coming.
Valley of Megiddo, isn't it?
Yes.
Valley of Megiddo, you can overlook it. The Valley of otherwise known as the Valley of Armageddon.
Mm-hmm.
You can when you go on a tour of Israel, you will go there.
Yes.
To see that. Sometimes Christians say pray for something and we don't even think about it after that. But the situation in Israel, in the Middle East, in Gaza, and what looms ahead in the next year or two, and in the immediate with the hostage situation, we do need to pray about that because we need a peaceful resolution. Ray, I don't know. President Trump's mentioned what did he say? We're going to take it over.
Right.
I don't know what he means by that exactly. Do you know what he meant?
He has not given us, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's given us any real details about that.
Other than his idea is it's beautiful. It's along the Mediterranean. What he wants to do is build resorts,
right,
there and
houses and
houses and all of this sort of thing. But first, you have to deal with the people who are there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what in the world you're going to be short of what he's talking about. That is where you say, okay, Egypt takes 250,000. Jordan takes 250,000. Saudi Arabia takes 1 million. I'm talking about, and these are that's right. Assuming you would get the people to leave, and go. What they have now to deal with in Gaza, if you're the folks who live there, you've got, thanks to Hamas's attack on Israel on October the 7th, Steve. They had to know they're going to butcher 1,200 Israeli citizens, including several Americans who are still hostage, I think. Some of them are. 6 of them, I think.
I believe so.
Hostages. Okay, that unleashed the power of the Israeli military on their own citizens. So if they got their day of butchery to, I guess, I hate to sound vulgar on this or coarse, but to get make them feel good, as it were, and then it's time. But they unleashed hell on their own people and on their own land, because now the Israelis have basically decimated the infrastructure of Gaza, and the buildings are in rubble. And so they don't have heavy equipment in Gaza to start moving out all that brick and mortar and steel and cable and all the whole thing, bricks or whatever else they got there, for miles and miles and miles and miles. These are just basically peasants, poor people living in. And you might say, well, they elected Hamas and they're suffering the consequences because of it, and that is true. That is true. But the Israelis are being painted as the bad guys because they do have overwhelming military power, and so they bomb. And sometimes when they bomb, Ray, Steve, Fred, and when you bomb buildings, people die.
Yeah.
Yes.
It strikes me that Hamas really wasn't concerned with the Palestinians' freedom of in any way, because before Israel went in and decimated the Gaza Strip, they were using their citizens as human shields.
That's what they've done forever.
Yeah, so they don't care about the lives of the civilians. It's all about hatred of Israel and seeing Israel tried to wipe them off the map. And I think that they knew that when they did the butchery on October 7th, that this was going to happen. But they wanted it because it brought the condemnation of the world down on Israel through groups like the United Nations, and it made them the victims.
But to what end? Do they think that would cause the demise of Israel?
That's the goal.
I know that's the goal, but
I also think
Israel's not going anywhere.
Hamas thought that they would hit Israel on October 7th, do what they did, but they also thought, okay, we're going to get Hezbollah to come down from Lebanon and hit Israel.
Another terrorist group on the northern border.
Yes, and then Iran is there, and Yemen has the Houthi rebels. They thought there was going to be a multi-pronged attack against Israel, and Israel would have to surrender.
And that's not happened.
And that hasn't happened.
It's not going to happen.
No.
That's what I don't know to what end when I say that. The bloodlust to kill the Jews and drive them into the sea, and for revenge on taking their land since 1948, their land being what's called the Palestinians, which there was no Palestine.
Nope.
It was British controlled it before the UN voted to give it to Israel to form a Jewish state, and then immediately the Arab countries around Israel began to attack Israel, and Israel fought back, and because Israel fought back and won, they captured land.
Mm-hmm.
What's the old saying? To the victor go the spoils.
Yes.
Is it true that the Jewish state Israel has captured land along the way of at least two big war times from land that these Palestinian people, the Arabs, were living on? Yes, that's true. But guess what? They were attacked, Israel was. They captured land, and they kept it.
Yep.
And that's what's called occupied. You hear the word occupied? You guys correct me if I'm wrong on anything historical, Ray. If you hear me say
so far, yeah.
So when you hear the word occupied, that's what they accuse the Jews in Israel of doing, is occupying, quote, Palestinian, or I call them Arabs, Arab Muslims for the most part's land, and they want them to give it back. That's the demand of much of the world, is Israel needs to give it back, give the land back that they captured during the war. Well, if they do that, then they might as well they're signing their own death warrant. The Jews in Israel are, because you can't put these people, these terrorists like Hamas, you can't make a two-state solution with these folks. That's suicide, and Israel knows that. That's why they're never going to do it. So you might as well give up that idea of a two-state solution. That's why we've come full circle here, Ray, to I don't know what you do with these folks, these 1.5 million, 2 million people.
There's been a lot of talk about the two-state solution over the last, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And there have been times when it has seemed like it could happen. And there have been some Israeli leaders who even some on the conservative side, who've said, well, maybe there's a way to work it out. But whatever day that is, that's not today. Okay. After October the 7th.
Right. After
the riots, after the rallies, after, the chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. After all the declarations of hatred for the Jews, the Israelis would be crazy, I was going to say insane, to go for any form of a two-state solution.
Yeah.
Could it happen in the future? Yeah, but that's some distance in the future. You do not negotiate, Tim, with people who want to kill you.
Right.
Who want to wipe you off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Steve, you're going to say or move on? You want to move on?
The first thing I had was a little less serious than this.
Okay.
Is it okay to
We can move on. Yeah. Well, we had Gaza left over from talking
That's
with
good.
Brad.
Great discussion.
So separate from that discussion. Let's move on to the next topic.
All right. Well, you know that Doge is doing its work in Washington, and I was reminded today as I was watching my Twitter feed that there are real people on the other side of these cuts, and they're suffering. And I wanted to bring you the story of one woman who is suffering because of these cuts. We don't have her name, but I just my heart goes out for this woman. This is cut 13.
I got a DHS letter in the mail this morning, and I just now opened it. And somebody reported me to the state of Michigan because I'm making money on TikTok, and I drive a 2024 BMW. They have cut my food stamps from almost $4,000 a month down to $88 a month. They are telling me if I want a review that I have to sell my car. So you're telling me if you were on welfare, food stamps, cash assistance, Section 8, you can't drive a nice car? They are forcing me to sell my brand new BMW, or I lose almost $4,000 in food stamps. Not only that, they have taken my cash assistance totally away. They are telling me that Section 8 will no longer be paying 95% of my rent, only 10% of my rent. So I will have to pay a little over $400 a month now instead of $60 a month.
Yeah, it's such a human tragedy.
Steve, that's got to be the Babylon Bee. That's not real. That's
real.
Not reality, is it?
It is real.
Oh man,
where does she live?
I don't know where she lives. In Michigan, I think she's
driving a BMW and getting $4,000 a month in what
food stamps.
And 95% of her rent paid for by you and me.
Yeah, but no more. Doge has cut that out now.
Is she kin to Justice Smollett? Because that sounds hoaxy right there, but you're saying that's real?
As far as I can tell.
Where did you get that?
I get all kinds of stuff like this on my Twitter
feed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, if you doubt that, there's a hearing yesterday. A person who looks into welfare fraud, she testified at this subcommittee hearing.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about this, Tim. This woman was been collecting food stamps and other federal benefits, and somebody investigated. It turns out this woman has a husband with a 6-figure salary and was taking his family on nice vacations and buying very expensive things. But she's been collecting all of this, just nobody checked up on it. Yeah, husband has a 6-figure salary, but she's getting food stamps and she's getting all these things.
Her husband?
Yes, her husband has a...
Well, because a lot of times these women won't marry.
Yeah, but this was her husband.
Okay, well, I just remember in college, and this is a long time ago, Brad Flintstone, if you remember him, he was a friend of mine.
Yes.
No, I remember in college, this would have been in the early 80s, and I worked at a deli with a young lady. And and we were just friends. Obviously, I was engaged, about to be married or something like that. I forgot where that was, but about 82, 83, right in there. But anyway, I remember having a conversation with her because she had 2 children, and she was probably 23, 24 years old. She had 2 kids, and her boyfriend would come by every night, right before we closed, and nice guy, would visit with her, and then he'd get in his car and leave after about 30 minutes. And I said, why aren't y'all married? I said, I don't mean to mind your business, but your boyfriend, you got 2 children by him? Yep. Why aren't you married? Well, if I get married, the welfare checks stop. And she didn't say it like that. She had her own language, but basically she was saying,
it's a consideration, right?
She said the government checks would stop
if
we got married, so I need to stay unmarried.
I don't know if this is a conspiracy theory, but the Johnson Great Society, this is when this all started, when they had, it's actually called a marriage penalty. And it has hurt the African-American community more than anything else. And because it's true, they make less money on government support if they're married than if they're single. And it has decimated the black family.
Yeah. Yeah, the incentive there, obviously she was going with the financial incentive. And you're right, it does have maybe unintended consequences.
I think it was intended.
Well, it could be right.
Some people say.
Some people say you sound like Trump.
Yeah, right.
Some people say, I'm not saying it, but some people say. You're listening to today's issues on American Family Radio. What's your next story, Steve?
Well, the Pope is speaking into the immigration issue.
The Pope is?
The Pope, Pope Francis. Now, Pope Francis is from Central America. He's, I think, the first Central American Pope, and he's a social.
I think it was South America.
Yeah,
South America.
Yeah,
Latin America.
Yeah,
and he's quite a social liberal, and so he is speaking into the immigration debate. He sent a letter to all of the bishops of the Council of Bishops in the United States, and included in this letter is this paragraph. He says, I have followed closely the major crisis that is taking place in the United States with the initiation of a program of mass deportation. The rightly formed conscience cannot fail to make a critical judgment and express disagreement with any measure that tacitly or explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. In other words, if you're a conscientious person, you cannot think of these illegal migrants as criminals. So he says they should be able to come in for almost any reason: extreme poverty, insecurity, exploitation, no matter what. And so the border. Go ahead.
That's called a pipe dream. You know when they elect a pope over there, they have smoke pipes.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I did. I see what you did there.
But listen, that particular pope, what's his name? Francis.
Francis.
He lives in a fantasy world. Did you get to the part where somebody had a response to him?
Yes. Our border czar, Tom Homan, you would probably guess would have an opinion about the immigration issue. He is also Catholic.
Yep, very dedicated Catholic.
Very dedicated Catholic. And so he had something to say. Let's listen to what Mr. Homan had to say, cut 9.
He ought to fix the Catholic Church and concentrate on his work and leave border enforcement to us. He wants to attack us from securing our border. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? So he's got a wall around to protect his people and himself, but we can't have a wall around the United States.
Good point.
Whoa.
So an individual Catholic can openly rebuke the Pope?
Well, he just did. I don't know whether he can.
Is
but
his
he
soul
just
at
did.
risk? Is that an unfair question?
No, I did a story on this
I don't know
today, and the Catholic person that I talked to was very critical of this.
Yeah, I think listen, one of my best friends is Roman Catholic, but I think you can, and he can't stand the Pope. So I hope his soul's not in danger. But I think what it is you can criticize the Pope our church leaders, or the pastors or the bishops or whatever, you just can't. You can't. There's their teaching on Scripture is when they go under the.
It's called ex cathedra.
Yeah. See, I started down a road. I couldn't get to the end. You know what I'm saying? My road was cut off because I lost my knowledge there.
There are some things that the Pope says that are supposed to be infallible.
Right. Yeah, I put it this way. You can criticize the Pope and still be a good Catholic.
Yeah.
All right?
Yes.
So that's not just like Tom Homan did, the department. He said basically the Pope needs to stick to his own business.
That's right.
And let us handle our business here. And he was speaking as an individual Roman Catholic in America. But the irony here, it's not lost when he says the Vatican has a wall around it.
Yes, and it has a police force inside.
Yeah.
To keep people from coming
That's
over
right.
the wall.
That's right.
I would like to ask the Pope, of all the immigrants, the migrants that have landed on the shores of Italy from over the world, how many have you allowed into the Vatican?
Yeah, just let them.
Yeah.
St. Peter's Basilica. Why don't you just let them stay there?
Yeah, and feed them.
Yeah, and what is the place called? I've been there before. You have too. You got St. Peter's Basilica, which is mind-blowingly beautiful. Right. But then, what is that called? What is that place out there called where people gather?
The big.
Out in front of the basilica. What is that called?
When the Pope comes out. And
where is that place?
Hundreds of thousands.
It starts with a T, doesn't it? Terra something?
Is that St. Peter's?
Peter Square, maybe?
Square?
Sounds good.
All right, let's call it that.
Oh, wow. I think it is, but anyway.
That sounds right.
Listen, if you ever get an opportunity to go to Rome, go to the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-blowing.
Yep. And I've been there.
And in particular, the Sistine Chapel.
Oh, yeah.
Sistine Chapel is just, again, Michelangelo, right, Ray?
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
It's just, you go in there and your jaw drops. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Fred.
You bet.
Ray, appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim.
May your weather improve hourly, Ray.
One can hope and pray.
Yeah. You'll be able to get out of the house in April. You hang in there.
That's right.
Thanks to Brent Creeley, our producer. Chris Woodward was on earlier. Dr. Alex McFarland was with us. And we thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Take care. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow for Trivia Friday.